It was placed in error on the procedural motion.
Very good. I then ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera, moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor, raise your hands. Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you.
Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the May 17th regular meeting of Council. I wish to first recognize we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018 number 7272 and Ministerial Order number M192 governing open meetings during a state of emergency and the Provincial Health Officer Order regarding gatherings and events. Therefore, this meeting is held virtually, so members of the public cannot attend in person, and question period will be suspended throughout the duration of the provincial health orders in effect. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. For late items this evening, agenda item 8A, RCMP quarterly update has been added to the addendum and is on your agenda this evening.
Thank you very much. A motion for approval of the agenda as amended. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. A motion for approval of the agenda as amended. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And a motion for the adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Motion carries. The Mayor's report, I'll be relatively short tonight. As some of you may know, May 10th to 16th is National Nursing Week. The slogan this year, or theme, is "We Answer the Call." From day one of this rather unparalleled and extraordinary COVID-19 pandemic that has developed and enveloped our world for over a year, nurses have continued to stand where they always do, caring for patients, family, and communities when they need it the most, as have many others working in our healthcare system. And so we just want to recognize tonight that it is National Nursing Week. Thank them for their incredible service to all of us over what has been well over a year now, and for the service they're going to have to continue to form in our healthcare system as we work our way through COVID. In addition, it is May the 9th to May 15th National Police Week. And obviously we wish to pay our respects and thanks to those, in particular in our own community, members of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who enforce the law, who have to deal on a weekly basis with some of the most vulnerable in our society, who have to do it with a sense of restraint and compassion as they enforce the law in our community, look out for our safety, advise us, help our kids in schools. And on behalf of the grateful city, I wish to say thank you to them. Now, I cannot resist, though, as a person who bears the name Krogh, which is Norwegian. For those of you of Norwegian descent, today, May the 17th, is the anniversary and to celebrate Norway's National Day, which commemorates the signing of the country's constitution in 1814. So to all of you of Norske stock, I wish a very happy May the 17th. I see Councillor Martman's thumbs up. I think those of us with a little Norwegian in us are so enlightened and happy to be here. So that is it for me. From the in-camera meeting, Ms. Guri, arise and report.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There was one item for you to rise and report on. Council passed a motion in the closed meeting this evening, which is May the 17th, 2021, to amend the financial plan, and I will just read out the motion that was passed. Pardon me, I had it marked and then I lost my page. So Council passed a motion to amend the 2021 to 2025 financial plan to include $262,000, $2,060 to $193 in 2021 for the installation of security gates at the RCMP detachment to be funded from payment in lieu of taxes, otherwise known as PILs. So that motion was passed at the closed meeting this evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Guri. The next item is under formal presentations, and I'm delighted to welcome tonight Inspector Lisa Fletcher, who's going to provide a presentation for the RCMP, a quarterly update on what's been happening in our city. Inspector Fletcher, welcome as soon as we can get you up on the screen, and there you are. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the first quarter stats. And as I stated previously, anything that involves 2020 is definitely going to involve an asterisk going forward in history, as it has changed a lot of the trends that we've seen in the past. Next page, please. So we're going to cover, as I stated, our first quarter and some of the current pressures and priorities. Okay, next one, please. And here are some of our individuals working with a personal protective equipment. Next slide, please. For our police files, these are the top 10 types of incidents that police officers go to during the first quarter. Mischief refers to damage or some form of property. Sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty. Are you hearing me here?
We are, Inspector Fletcher. You're fine at this end.
Okay, just one sec. Okay. Sorry, mischief involves damage to someone's property that prevents them from enjoying it. And the top 3 items relate to disturbances and trespass act. Then we see the issues associated to motor vehicles with the traffic complaints, theft from motor vehicle. Then we have assault and other threats, which are commonly linked together. and then theft and shoplifting. Next slide. During the first quarter, we saw a decrease in property offenses throughout the city of Nanaimo. Some communities experienced more thefts, but overall, as a community, this was decreased. We attribute some of that to the fact that more people were home, some businesses were closed, and working with less people coming into the stores as they enacted COVID protocols. And this decreased some of the incidents related to theft and shoplifting. We also saw a decrease in motor vehicle collisions and driving while impaired as a number of licensed liquor establishments were closed, less people were commuting, and there was less consumption while they were out and then returning and driving home. We did see an increase in our drug trafficking arrests, and this was, we believe, in part based on some emphasis in trying to mitigate the extremely negative impact of the opioid crisis. Next slide. This slide demonstrates that we did see a number of calls that would normally go to the bylaw officers. However, they occurred after hours and police responded. We saw an increase of 77% of these calls. As well, we did see an increase to damage to private properties. Some of these, as I stated previously, were very specific to neighborhoods. And to address that, we've worked with our community policing services, and they've been doing safety audits in some of the communities that we've identified as wanting to get more information on. We should have those results a little bit later this summer, and I'll be able to report back on that. Next slide. Violent offenses, we saw an increase of 28% in this quarter compared to the quarter of 2020. Some of that may be as a result of different processes through the criminal justice system where individuals were not held in custody as long as a part of the COVID protocols. However, we have seen some national increases as well in this field. Further, our violent offenses are trending up, and this is across Canada. Currently, we are above the 5-year average at 61%. Next slide. We have seen an increase of sexual offenses within the city of Nanaimo at 9%. The national average is 7%. And again, this is trending upwards at plus 85%. This could be also as a result of increased media attention on reporting and the inappropriateness of these types of incidents. We have seen an increase in Nanaimo of child sexual exploitation in this quarter, and we have a national average that has increased at plus 46%. We in Nanaimo are one of 8 communities that has advanced training and expertise in this area, and we have been doing a lot of very strong investigative work, and that may also have impacted the scoring somewhat as we're better poised to recognize the material. And may I have the next slide, please? Mental health. We've had a very good report coming back from our new mental health liaison officer who's been working in conjunction with VIHA. They have been very effective in working together on their intake, and they are seeing that through their processes, the individuals that they have an opportunity to work with have been more stabilized and less likely to have repeat calls for service, which is a real positive attribute. There may be opportunities in the future to do more collaboration with VIHA. We're currently looking at some opportunities to formalize that. So we'll continue to work towards that. Next slide. In terms of our traffic enforcement, We issued approximately 1,100 violation tickets during the first quarter. This is down a bit from previous years, and that is an indication of just a little bit less traffic as well. May I have the next slide, please? On our impaired investigations, as previously reported, we're seeing less people driving while impaired by drug or alcohol. However, of concern was the fact that of those that we have detected using alcohol, very concerned because some of the blood alcohol concentration readings were very high, which is obviously a disturbing statistic. Next slide, please. And as you're aware, we're working 24/7, 365 days. Next slide. One of the areas during 2020 that we've been taking on new roles in is the authority that we have under the public health order. We have provided some additional support recently to BC Ferries, as well as enforcing public health orders. We've had very good compliance within the community and strong support. So our approach has been more of education and mediation rather than enforcement and more punitive approaches. We've had very strong success here on the island, and we're very pleased to see us moving in a good direction that way. Next slide. On this slide are outlining our provincial partners and the initiatives we have going on currently. With the situation table, we're working with city representative and associate, moving forward for training with a global facilitator with our provincial and community partners, and that's progressing quite well. Further, we're working with the School District 68, where we focus on our education, prevention, and reducing exploitation. And in those circumstances, we are assisting the school district personnel through their requests for assistance and expertise to help support the schools, the children, and the family. Indigenous Police Services. Through our Indigenous Police Services personnel, we're working with the leadership to provide coordinated QD responses to Snuneymuxw and Snuneymuxw. And our community response unit is coming on strength. These are newly created positions from last year's positions, and they are commencing training. They'll be incorporating the information coming out of the safety audit survey, as well as our criminal intelligence analysts. And our objective is to improve our community and personnel safety. The resolutions that come out of the criminal response unit are comprehensive and interest-based in terms of all parties. So those that are victimized in terms of the community, as well as those who may be responsible for those actions. We'll be conducting an annual review and then adjusting the parameters and trying to make this unit really reflective of the needs of the community. Two future pressures for that will be a crime stats analyst, further work there, and an additional supervisory position. In the interim, we'll be assigning this to someone who has additional duties to take it on. Next slide. Happy faces out on a rainy day doing a search. Next slide. Nanaimo, sorry, we've covered that. Next slide, please. Nanaimo priorities. When we were sitting down with our senior management team to determine the priorities for the detachment moving forward, we really wanted them to be translatable and meaningful for not only ourselves at the detachment, but also for the city and the citizens within the city. And when we look at the first category, crime reduction and community safety, what does that mean and how do we translate that? What it means to me is our kids safe as they move about on their way to school? Are we driving in safe and appropriate manner? Are people feeling comfortable in their communities? If not, are we able to target it in an effective way to try and improve the community safety and reduce crime, and using all of the various subspecialties that we have at the detachment to provide a coordinated enforcement response? The next term, collaboration and partnerships. As I've already spoken of, a number of our initiatives this year involve collaboration with our provincial and community partners. In terms of the situation table, that is an entire community response. When we look at our work with the school district, that is in many, many homes throughout the jurisdiction, and we take that responsibility very seriously in putting forward a very proactive approach. Likewise with our mental health liaison officer, which is our newest position, and the work that's been going forward there. These are collaborative and built on strong partnerships, and I hope that we can continue that work. Moving to the third tier, inclusion and reconciliation. What that means for us is that we're able to police for everyone in the community, and that everyone feels comfortable coming forward and using the RCMP. Lastly, targeted prolific enforcement. Those are multi-jurisdictional, often the entire island, or sometimes throughout the province, where we need to use complex and sophisticated manners of fighting crime. These are not something that we can solve generally just within the detachment confines. And those ones we want to take advantage of the network and other enforcement opportunities. Next slide, please. This was an initiative that came from the members on AWatch, and it was their recognition of the missing and murdered Indigenous women. It was recognized last week, and we have Ms. Naomi Good, who is a new member of our detachment. She is on the forefront on the right-hand side wearing long sleeves, and this was her initiative. And Ms. or Constable Good is a new member at the detachment, but she comes from strong roots as she grew up here, so we're welcoming her back. Next slide, please. So as I've stated, in terms of the collaborative approach, that has been a strong emphasis this year. And you'll see that through our ongoing work with community policing. We're looking to enhance public safety through our coordinated data. And this includes working cooperatively with the Nanaimo Fire Department and BC Ambulance Services. Through the meetings that we've been having, we are increasing our awareness of issues that are often multifaceted. And because our record management systems are different, we're able to bring more information to our meetings. We're also working in conjunction with VIU to incorporate internships into our detachment. And this is really mutually beneficial. We get current education trends and their enthusiasm, and we bring a little bit of sageness and experience to it, and it's been really positive and something we're looking forward to continuing. We've been doing it for a few years now, and this year we were able to incorporate them into the public safety audits, and I see a lot more opportunities coming up. Looking to work with our communities towards target hardening and mitigating challenges within the communities. And it's important that we have adequate resources and redundancy so that we can fully participate with our partners. One of the key principles of collaborative approaches comes from Peel's Principles of Policing. And it indicates that the key to preventing crime is that we earn public support, and that every community member must share the responsibility of preventing crime as if they were members of the force. However, community members will only accept this responsibility if a community supports and trusts police. And I take that seriously, and we need to collectively work towards that goal. Next slide. So I wanted to include this picture because in a way it looks like an ending to a presentation, but it's actually the beginning, because this picture was taken July 1st of 2020. And it's 3 members getting ready on Canada Day to start the morning. And because the coffee shops and that were closed, they took their coffee down at the beach. And I think of it as a bright new day. So I want to thank you for your time. And I know we can't take questions necessarily from the audience. However, if there are any from those online.
From any questions from members of council? If not, I just want to extend my thanks. Councillor Martman, you're going to have to tap.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to very quickly, it isn't a question. It's wonderful to hear about all the collaboration, but I especially was interested in the mental health liaison officer and the collaboration with VIHA. And I definitely look forward to you bringing back more information. And I hope this program expands, because delivering that kind of service to our citizens for wellness calls is extraordinary. So thank you for all your work on that. And thank you to all the police officers.
Thank you, Councillor Martman.
Seeing no further questions, Inspector Fletcher, again, National Police Week to you, all the members who work with you. Thank you so very much. Councillor Martman very appropriately pointed out the challenges your members face every day, dealing with what I will describe as our collective failure as a society over the last 30 or 40 years to properly care for those suffering severe mental health issues, and everyone down to the most minor of complaints. Too many of whom have ended up living in our streets, living lives that none of us would wish on our worst enemies. So I'm very appreciative of the challenges, as I say, that your membership faces. On behalf of council, again, thank you so much for the presentation tonight. I hope the public has found it as useful and as interesting as the rest of us.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for your earlier comments.
The next item is Guri, committee minutes just for receipt. No motion required. We do have a motion for adoption of consent items. Moved Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Martman. No one wishes any of them pulled. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Worship. I wish.
You just turned yourself off again.
Sorry, when I switch my screens, it goes off. I wish to have 10B1, I believe, pulled out the Long Lake House.
Paddling and Rowing Center?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, we'll pull that one out. Everything else will remain. All those in favor? Any contrary? None? And Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I want to first say that I'm totally want to see this building built, and as we had outlined in our GPC, I think a number of us want to see that as well. My concern here is that this is going to be a building to house canoes, and canoes are integral to the culture of Indigenous people right across Canada. I myself has been on canoe journeys 3 times already, and it's ingrained in our culture here. And as an Indigenous person, I would hope that we would build a building like this that has Indigenous content to it. And when this first came to in front of council, I approached an Aboriginal Center and saying they don't have enough funding for this, but if you would reach out to them and partner with them, there's a tremendous amount of funding for Indigenous partnerships in this country, and NAC did reach out to them. They had meetings. NAC even offered to loan them the use of their grant writing person to be able to help create the funding from this. And then there was sort of crickets after that. And now we see before us a building that has no Indigenous content whatsoever. and also no partnerships with the local Indigenous groups who could use access to that building as well. So I'm going to vote against the proposal in front of us, but I do wish to see this building built and hope that in the future that we would have something with more of an Indigenous look to it and partnerships with local Indigenous groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, just to that, I just wanted to point out that this is going out to the public for review and comment, and I'm sure any of the Indigenous groups and Nanaimo First Nation would be able to comment on that, and then that feedback would come back to us. Thank you.
And I see no other. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. And further to what Councillor Armstrong said, that was my thoughts too, because these are three concepts going out to public review. But maybe through you to staff, does this open us up? Can we receive input from other than these three concepts? Could we, if somebody else says, how about if we do this or do that has more Indigenous outcomes, how does that look and can it be done?
Mr. Harding, welcome. Director of General Manager of Parks and Recreation.
Thank you, Worship. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
So I didn't get to do a pre-test. So to Councillor Hammonds, for you, Your Worship, absolutely. So when we go for a public review, we always come back with every comment and issue that people come up with and or want to suggest. So this was, again, when we presented it to council last week, it was to try and get where we were at from the programming. And then I will say a lot of other restraints and constraints that we do have on that site, one being out of the leaf strip area. A very small site, so there's not a lot of opportunities to make a huge building. It's already quite big. So again, this was to get out to the public, have some material on site over the busy summer season, so that families that use the beach and other activities can see and have an opportunity to put some input in.
Thanks, Mr. Harding. Ms. Gurry, just on a matter of process, do we have to actually read out the motion? No, we can just call for the vote.
Yeah, Your Worship, because it's already been moved and seconded, it's just being voted on separately now, yes.
Thank you. That's what I thought. All those in favor? And contrary? Councillor Bonner? And I think that's it, if I'm looking at the screen correctly.
I saw Councillor Turley was opposed as well. Is that correct? Councillor Turley?
No, I got confused on, I thought Councillor Bonner's motion was to not send it out. So I'm confused on that.
Oh, so sorry, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Turley. It's the original motion from last Monday's Governance and Priorities Committee meeting. So nothing has changed from there. You're just voting on it separately. So
I'm in favor then.
Okay, thank you for that.
8-1. Thank you very much, everyone, for the comments. The next are delegations unrelated to agenda items. And the first on the list is Mr. Bob Brash, who is the Executive Director of the Truck Loggers Association.
Your Worship, thank you, Your Worship. I was just, delegations have 5 minutes, so I will turn my video off, but when it gets to about the 4-minute mark, I'll come back on the screen to kind of give you that heads up that their time is down to 1 more minute, and then I can raise my hand when their time is up just to help you with that process.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And before you begin, Mr. Brash, I just wanted to say that at 4 minutes, I'm just going to interrupt with a fairly loud voice, but hopefully not sounding rude, saying 1 minute. So you have 5 minutes in total to make your presentation. And are you ready to go, sir?
I believe I am, and my apologies. I thought it was for 10 or 15 minutes. So I'll probably skip ahead to some slides real quick here. So
I'm sorry you didn't understand, but I'm sure the man of your ability will be able to condense appropriately and react to a difficult situation.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so please proceed, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. TLA has been around for an awful long time, 78 years. 500 members across BC, about 20 community members, and 37 members actually in Nanaimo. You're one of the biggest hubs for our membership, and that represents about 1,500 employees. But obviously, many more, because not everybody belongs to our association, of course, and the major licensees have their own associations. I'm going to skip ahead even to the next slide. We obviously work with an awful lot of groups out there, the provincial government, major licensees, labor, safety committees, the BC First Nations Forestry Council, and other forest-related associations. Next slide, please. So here's where I'll spend a couple of minutes. As we see it, the challenges moving forward in the forest sector. There's a concern about the overall investment climate in British Columbia right now, and I'm sure most of you have heard about that. We are high cost in the global competition there for the forest sector, and that's got to change. And the investment happening in British Columbia right now is not up to what it should be, even in these record profit times with high lumber prices. We're concerned about the long-term certainty of the working forest, and that includes the old growth issues, of course. We're concerned about the complexity of the operating environment in British Columbia, and even today I had 2 phone calls from contractors that are out of work because permits can't be issued in a timely manner. There's a challenge of getting consistent information about the forest sector out to everybody that lives in BC. And the most important thing in terms of a challenge is all of us collectively trying to sort of come up with a vision for the forest sector moving ahead. Next slide, please. Can't help but mention the working forest and old growth because that's on top of everybody's mind these days. There is a flood of data and opinions that I could offer you. I'm certainly not going to get into that today. There's a lack of constructive dialogue that's happening and certainly a polarized debate. I could ask the question, who's talking to who in terms of the various opinions out there and how we come to some solutions in our forest sector moving ahead. And harvesting of old growth is not always a yes or no proposition. Our folks are pretty innovative of what they can do over the years, and we've adapted many times over the decades, and we can adapt again. The economic contributions remain significant for the forest sector. Every logging truck you see go by the road probably is 15 to 20,000 at least in GDP contribution to the province. We want a broader vision for the BC's forest sector moving forward. We support change, but the right changes. We quite agree with increased diversity of tenures, increased diversity of flow and logs and lumber. Those are all changes that we can easily support. But the primary thing is, of course, we want to do as much as we can to retain our working forest because that's the base upon which the industry will grow. Next slide, please. And I guess the main purpose of this conversation was to sort of say that there's hopefully some opportunities for us to work together on further collaboration and cooperation. We have lots of firsthand knowledge about the forest sector, its contributions, payrolls, and employees. We can assist in public education information. We can assist in coordination of forest policy review and development that we have agreement upon, along with advocacy efforts with federal and provincial governments. And again, I'm like a broken record, and I'll conclude with that, hopefully within my 5 minutes, is work towards a collective vision on improving the overall forest sector, its prosperity, and of course, maintaining healthy forest communities. And as I said before, that's got to start with us having discussions, because right now the discussions are way too polarized. So that's it. I appreciate the time, Mayor and Council, for being able to sort of present this information to you today, and I'll pass it over to you now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brash. You're certainly within your 5 minutes. I just want to confirm something. In your presentation, you said you have 37 members in Nanaimo itself, correct?
Yes, I did.
And they are the employers of 1,500 people in our community, correct?
Yes, Nanaimo is one of the biggest hubs that we have for membership. And of course, as I said, we're not the only ones employing forest sector folks, but that's our membership alone.
Just your membership. Thank you very much. Any questions? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you. Interesting presentation. Appreciate that. My family, parts of my family are longtime loggers. I wanted to know how you wish to have this conversation go forward.
I don't have a magic solution in terms of how we go about doing that, to be honest, Councillor. And I think a lot of it, and I'm not trying to be evasive, is input from folks like yourself and the other community members that belong to us. A lot have said that they want to engage further. There are obviously some concerns. A lot have community tenures. A lot have people that work in the forest sector. So they want to be involved. And I think, to be honest, some of the direction is going to come from the provincial government, because we've heard the Premier is going to come out with his intentions document soon, and we all sort of wonder what that's going to be. But hopefully that will spur some sort of opportunity for folks like ourselves and you to sort of have some input, because right now not too many people are talking, even in government, to us. So that may dictate to some extent how we can construct something between us. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of indication in the direction we'd like to go.
Thank you, Councillor Bonner. Anyone else? If not, Mr. Brash, appreciate you taking the time tonight to speak to council. Much appreciated.
Okay, thank you again for the opportunity, everybody, and look forward to chatting again.
Thank you. The next is a delegation of Aaron Pointer, Dan Morris, and Tony Dobson regarding the Opal Road traffic calming measures. And again, I trust they've had a chance to listen. That's a collective presentation, Ms. Gurry, a total of 5 minutes. And at 1 minute left out of 5, I will announce 1 minute. I don't believe you're able to come on the screen, Ms. Gurry, before, so I'm going to look at my clock. Ms. Gurry.
Yes, Your Worship, I will try to come on at the 4 minute mark. I will track the time here. I did come on at 4 minutes, but like you said, he was well below his time, the last delegation. So I'll just turn my video off for these presenters.
Sure. Thank you very much. Good evening to the three of you. Are we ready to proceed? And who's going first? Mr. Dobson, if it's you, your mic is off.
Mayor Krogh, this is Aaron Pointer. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, but I can't see you, but you're welcome. If you're lead speaker, by all means, there you are.
I am. Thank you.
So please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, Mayor Krogh, and councillors. My name is Aaron Pointer. I live on Opal Road in the city of Nanaimo, and I thank you for this opportunity to appear before you as a delegate. I'm joined this evening by my neighbors Tony Dobson and Dan Morris. This delegation respectfully requests that Your Worship or another eligible councillor bring a motion to reconsider the resolution passed by council at its May 3rd, 2021 meeting to remove the turn control barriers at the intersection of Opal Road and Rock City Road, and that council vote to defer any decision on the matter until a more thorough exploration of alternative solutions has taken place. We are supported in our request by a petition with 247 virtual and 21 actual signatures collected over the course of approximately 1 week, reflecting only the wishes, not only the wishes of the residents of the Opal Tana Hillside neighborhood, but of concerned citizens across the city of Nanaimo. The basis for our request engages principles no less fundamental to the proper functioning of a democratic government than majority rule, natural justice, and the rule of law. At the May 3rd meeting, council had before it a staff report of the same date by which it was advised that the 2018 goals of reducing traffic volumes and speeds on Opal Road by way of the barriers had been achieved, and the level of risk to motorists arising from illegal turning activity at the intersection was likely low, given the low traffic volumes and clear sightlines. It was recommended that council direct staff to continue to monitor the operations at the intersection and modify them if necessary. Your Worship expressed a number of times during the meeting that you preferred to defer any motion to remove the barriers to another time. You made the following remarks. My inclination is if there was a desire to pursue option 3 of the staff report, which was to remove the barriers, or even option 2 as well, to increase the barriers, as opposed to the staff recommended option, I would be inclined to ask that it be postponed or put over to a meeting, say a month down the road, so that in fact the public, for whom this has been a very contentious issue, had an opportunity, as I'm sure this will receive some press coverage, to comment on this, as opposed to just assuming that the staff report would pass tonight without public comment. Councillor Hemmond spoke next. She stated, "Thank you, Your Worship. I think that seems like a wise course." Councillor Martman later sought clarification from Your Worship as to your earlier remarks. You stated, "What I was suggesting is this. Look, this is it's amazing how these things become so controversial, but this is very controversial. I think the public, when it reads the agenda that the city puts out and sees there's a staff recommendation, even though there were 4 options altogether in the staff report, many people would simply assume that the staff recommendation, as it most appropriately and most often does, is simply accepted and dealt with. So my concern is if there is to be something other than the option in the staff report as recommended, that we defer this for a month or so, not with the hopes of securing information about the increased traffic at Rock City and Departure Bay and Rock City and Uplands, but simply to, I hate to encourage more controversy, simply to allow the public to email, contact City Hall, and express their views on this again before we make a decision on it. That's all. I simply, as council knows from previous discussions, I'm not fond of notices of motion that come out of the discussion because often it simply means the public doesn't have a chance to express its views. And we don't have to follow the public views all the time, but I think it's important that the public be heard. Now, despite your worship's guidance, Councillor Martman then proceeded to bring a motion to remove the barriers. 5 members of council, including your worship and Councillor Hemmens, voted in favor of the motion. The remaining 4 members of council voted against the motion, and the motion was carried. The resolution to remove the barriers was as controversial amongst the residents of the Opal-Tana Hillside neighborhood as your worship anticipated it would be. Having fought for so long to achieve a degree of peace and safety on Opal Road, the residents were shocked and disappointed to learn that it had been taken away without even the opportunity to express their views to council. Accordingly, I wrote to your worship on May 6th to inquire why, having made the remarks that you did concerning the necessity of public consultation, you then voted in favor of the motion. You replied as follows.
We have 1 minute left.
I know my council fairly well, and it was clear, having suggested a deferral, that the motion to defer was going to be defeated, and I was not going to waste my time to do so. Council wanted it dealt with that night. I also wrote to Councillor Hemmens on May 6th to ask why, having agreed with your worship about the necessity of public consultation, she did not bring a motion to defer consideration of the matter. She replied as follows. I agree with the mayor's approach and would have supported it had he made a motion to that effect. Accordingly, it is clear that at the time Councillor Martin's motion was brought, 6 of the 9 members of council, being your worship, Councillor Hemmens, and the 4 councillors who voted against it, either disagreed with the motion or thought it should be deferred. Had your worship or Councillor Hemmens brought a motion to defer, it would have been passed by a vote of 6-3. The May 3rd resolution represents a breakdown in the democratic process. A motion has been passed that did not conform to the expressed views of a majority of the members of council. As a result, the public has been deprived of its right of natural justice.
Ms. Pointer, if you could wrap up, please.
In a fair hearing in a matter of public importance, the few drivers who persist in driving around the barriers have succeeded in defeating the rule of law. It is a situation that demands rectification. Your worship, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman, you had your hand raised for a question?
Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear Councillor Martman.
No, Councillor Martman, you have to unmute. Thank you.
I just wanted to take the opportunity to clarify something about when I asked for clarification of the mayor during the meeting. The mayor had stated if we were going to bring forward a motion that was not one of the 4 motions that were already stated, and we're going to create a new motion, that is when he would want a notice of motion. I read a motion that was already one of the motions that were there. I did not create a new motion. I read the motion that I wanted to read. So it didn't need to be done as a notice of motion because it was already there. I just wanted to clarify that part. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martman. This is the time for questions of the delegation, though. Are there any questions for the delegation? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I don't live on the road. I was wondering if one of the delegations could kind of just give me an idea what it was like before we put the traffic calming in, and what it was like before that, and what is it like now?
I'm going to ask Mr. Dobson to reply to that. He is the longest standing resident of Opal Road in our delegation.
It's nice to know that seniority still counts for something.
Thank you, councillors. Mr. Mayor, I've been here for 43 years, and the traffic prior to the April 29th, 2019, was hugely concerning for all of us on the street. There was a steady flow of traffic, both uphill and downhill, and 2 neighbors that I know of decided to sell their house to move out. One of them after their pet was killed on the street, and they had a 2-year-old who was starting to run around, and they were very concerned. They're just downhill 2 doors from me. And there has been huge amount of concern. I spent many hours trying to get out of my driveway, not hours, over time, spent a lot of time waiting in my driveway because my corner of Tunna onto Opal is blind, and people come around there very sharply, and that's my driveway right there. And so I wait and wait and wait, and frequently as I start to pull out, people don't wait for me to complete my turn. They actually go around into the opposite lane to go downhill in their anxiety to get down Opal. So I've been very, very concerned about the traffic. The calming measures really worked. We were so pleased with the peace and tranquility that happened. And in my way of thinking, it was not supposed to be through thoroughfare to Rock City. By the way, I did a count the other day. In an hour and a half, we had 67 vehicles come down Opal. A third of those turned left onto Rock City at the bottom. And during that same time, less than that number of vehicles actually passed by on Rock City, which is the designated thoroughfare. There were less vehicles going the same direction on Rock City than the ones I actually counted on Opal. And that to me is still hugely concerning, and that's with people just ignoring the no left turn at the bottom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further questions to the delegation? Councillor Thorpe.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And my question is to the delegation, but it's a process one. And I just want to make sure that the delegation members understand the rules for requesting reconsideration. And I think in fairness, Your Worship, our other viewers might well like that information as well. So for example, I would be happy to make a motion to reconsider, but I am not allowed to because I was on the losing side of that vote. So maybe Ms. Gurry could just clarify that for everybody. Thank you.
Certainly, Ms. Gurry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So through you to the delegation, Councillor Thorpe, and the public, yes, we do have it outlined in our procedure bylaw that a member of council can reconsider a motion that was brought to the council table at the next council meeting. There was a special council meeting between the May 3rd meeting and the meeting this evening, but it was for a specific purpose for the financial plan and bylaws. And as long as the process was initiated and or there's some details around it, but it is allowed if a member on the prevailing side of that vote wished to bring it back for reconsideration, they could do so this evening. And or the mayor has the ability to reconsider a motion regardless as to what side of the vote he was on. So Councillor Thorpe is correct. A member that was on the prevailing side or the side where the motion went through could bring that motion back for reconsideration. There's other rules as well. It has to be at the next council meeting or when an absent member of council is back, because they can also bring back a motion for reconsideration, and or if the matter hasn't already been acted upon. So there are some limitations, but that is the process.
Thank you, Ms. Gurry. Any other questions from council to the delegation? Seeing none, thank you to the three of you for taking your time tonight to make your presentation to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
The next item is 12, and that is reports. And the first is Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 416-701 and 702 Fern Ridge Place, 1031 to 1047 Harewood Mines Road, 1018 to 1046 Palomino Place, and 703 and 729 Trailside Road. Mr. Lindsay, please.
Good afternoon, Your Worship. Good evening, and good evening to council. I'm going to turn the development applications over immediately to Director Holm for a brief introduction of the report.
Mr. Holm, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship and Council, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to introduce this item. And thank you for reading off that long list of addresses. I won't repeat that, but the property's on Harewood Mines Road, and it's on the east side of the Parkway, south side of Harewood Mines Road. It's the site of a new development, a new subdivision that's gone in there. Recently, we have an application, a development variance permit application from Williamson and Associates. That's on behalf of Riga Properties Limited, and they're requesting variances to the zoning bylaw in order to increase the minimum permitted height for a number of the lots, as well as to reduce the required rear yard setback for several of the lots as well. The property is, as I mentioned, the site of a new subdivision. It's actually zoned steep slope residential according to the zoning bylaw, and it's neighborhood designated within the OCP. The proposal includes requested variance of 9 meters to 10.4 meters for building height for lots 1 to 6 and 12 through 19. And it includes requests to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 to 3 meters for lots 6, 11, 12, and 30. Staff support the proposed variances, which were developed through a comprehensive design review of the site that the developer has undertaken. They allow buildings that appear as one story from the street, while using the building to address the grade, designing the building to address the grade on the site. As well, the requested rear yard variances allow for duplexes sited, so attached to dwelling unit buildings to create a pleasant street frontage on each of the flanking and front-facing street, and to provide reasonable usable space for future residents of those units. Notification has taken place. I understand that there is a delegation from Brock Williamson available. He's representing Williamson Associates. If council has any questions, I'm also happy to take questions if you have any, and that's all I had to say about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Holm. Mr. Williamson, good evening. You want to address council for your 5 minutes on behalf, or do you wish to share it with others, or are you just here for questions? Turn your hand.
I'm here for questions, Mayor and Council. I believe digitally the owner, Guy Wanacott of Riga Properties, is here too, and also John Larson of CA Design. We've reviewed the staff report. We agree with it. We petitioned the neighborhood. We walked around with our package showing them what we were going to do, and we had no comments or concerns. And we're here for any questions should any member of council have any, and that's about it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williamson. I see Councillor Turley has his hand up. Please.
Thank you, Worship. This may be through to staff. On the lot number 11, on the table showing the different variances that are being sought, lot number 11 shows an address of 705 Trailside, but throughout the rest of the report, that piece of property appears to be 703 Trailside. Is that just a typo, or?
Thank you. I believe, yes, through to, your worship to Councillor Turley, I believe that is a typo. Thank you.
Thanks.
And who said council doesn't read the reports? Well done, Councillor Turley. If there's no questions for Mr. Williamson and no questions for staff, I'm going to ask Councillor Martman to make the motion.
Thank you. A motion that council issue development variance permit number DVP 416 with variances to increase the maximum permitted building height from 9 meters to 10.4 on lots 1 to 6 and lots 12 to 19, and reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 7.5 to 3 meters on lots 6, 11, 20, and 30.
And do we have a seconder? Seconded Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Don't see any. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Williamson, and to the Wanacotts. Good evening. You're free now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
The next is 12B, Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 417-1925 Bowen Road. And Mr. Holm again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And this is another development variance permit. This is from El Dorado Development Corp. And the request is to vary the maximum permitted gross floor area for an individual retail unit on the property. The property is Core 3 zoned, and it's within the community corridor designation in the OCP. The proposal is, as I mentioned, to allow a retail store. There's a limit of a maximum floor area of 750 square meters for retail use in the Core 3 zone. The intent of that restriction is to limit the overall scales to prevent a large format retailer from operating within the corridor zone. The proposed unit is an existing unit with a floor area of 940 square meters. It's been there for quite some time. It was previously operated as this is Bowen Center for reference on Bowen Road, but it was previously operated as a furniture and appliance sales store for quite some time, and an existing unit area of 940 square meters. It's a corner unit and would not actually be large format retail in the event that the variance were passed. The variance request is from 750 square meters to 940 square meters for the individual retail unit. That's unit 17 on the property. And staff support the requested variance, and I'm happy to take any questions if you'd like.
Thank you very much. Before I go to the delegation, do Councillors Turley and Brown ask their questions of Mr. Holm now, or shall we hear from the delegation first? Councillor Turley, I can't read your lips.
Your Worship, I think it's appropriate if Mr. Holm takes a question now before the delegation.
Very good.
But you'll hear from the delegation before there's a motion on the floor, though.
Okay. Councillor Turley and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't have any typo issues on this one. The question I have is kind of to help me kind of get a visual of the size of the actual inside of the store. Can anybody kind of give me a ballpark figure of what the square meters would be of a typical grocery store, say the Country Grocer behind it there, just for reference?
Country Grocer, sorry, through your worship, to and maybe I should ask if we could bring up attachment D, which actually shows the site plan and floor plans as well. I'm answering this, but thank you. And if that's overhead now, I'm not sure, or available to you. Attachment D to the report, and page 2 actually shows the shows the unit location. So Country Grocer, I'm not 100% sure of the size, but it would be like large format would probably be in the 25,000. Oh, there we go. Thank you very much. You can see the relative scale of the unit there. But yeah, Country Grocer large format is probably in the range of 25,000 square feet or larger. In that case, it's probably closer to somewhere between 50 and 70,000 square feet. I'm not actually sure of the floor area of Country Grocer, but that sort of relative scale, this is quite significantly smaller than that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley. Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just sort of a general zoning question. Is this standard in all the corridor zones? And I'm just trying to understand the intent of the zoning. I guess it's not totally related to this application, so I could follow up, but I'm just curious why this limitation.
I think Mr. Holm will be anxious to answer this. I know Mr. Lindsay discussed it earlier today. It's a bit of an historical issue here. Mr. Holm.
Yeah, certainly. I'll do my best. Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Brown's question. So the intent of limiting and the single unit gross floor area for retail use in the corridor zone is to to prevent sort of a large format retail to kind of animate the street space and provide for smaller units without establishing a single large format retailer in the corridor zone. It was actually increased historically. The original zoning bylaw had a limit of 500 square meters. That was increased to 750 square meters through amendments to the zoning bylaw. And yeah, the intent generally is to, within the corridor zone, to create sort of a walkable, smaller format, animated street frontage rather than a large format retail space within the corridor zone. I hope that helps. I'm happy to take up that further if you'd like.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, thanks for that.
And Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Literally along the same lines, having looked at the Country Grocer, it's probably the better part of 5 times bigger than this place. Will we be looking at increasing the allowable retail floor space through our OCP going forward in the future on Core 3? I understand the concept here is to have these walkable areas where there's a whole bunch of little stores and stuff like that, but the Country Grocer is literally right beside this place, and it's like 5 times bigger. And so how did that get in there, or was that through a variance?
Mr. Holm.
I believe, through Your Worship, to Councillor Bonner's question, I believe there was a site-specific zoning for Country Grocer, and as well, you know, as is the case with this development, this is a historic building, and well, not actually a historic building, but it's been around for a while, an existing unit. But in the case of new buildings proposed, or even in the case of reuse of an existing building, council can always, as you're doing tonight, consider variances to that gross floor area limit. So where appropriate through design, even through development permit, you could consider variances to that condition if you so choose, if a rationale is put forward to support a proposal, a use that is designed sensitively and does you know, accommodate the or achieve the objectives of the design criteria, the animated street frontage, and has that you know, that feel to it, that appearance. It can be varied through development permit as well, through sensitive design review and consideration.
Thank you very much. Councillors Turley and Bonner, if you could take your hands down unless you wish to ask another question. You don't want to confuse the poor mayor here. If no further questions, Mr. Jason Hendricks. Mr. Hendricks, do you want to say anything, or are you just here to answer questions if necessary?
Yeah, I'll say a little bit if that's all right, Your Worship.
Please, and you know you're entitled to up to 5 minutes, and at 4 minutes I will tell you you've got a minute left.
Okay, thank you very much.
So please begin.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jason Hendricks with Eldorado Developments, the owners of 1925 Bowen Road, and I would like to just give you a brief history and then a little bit more information regarding the development variance permit. So Bowen Center was constructed in the early 80s and was purchased by Eldorado Developments in the mid 1980s. And could I have slide 1, please? So that's, as many of you remember it, in 2013, we completed a major facade renovation to upgrade the center and add some much needed curb appeal. And that's slides 2 and 3, please. In regards to unit number 17 and the variance requested, a flooring company occupied that space from 1991 and vacated in 2019. The space has been in its current layout with an area of 940 meters squared for 30 years. Slide 4, please. Since the flooring company moved out 2 years ago, the unit has been vacant with no interest or prospective tenants until we recently received an offer to lease from Dollarama. The space is challenging to lease as it has very little storefront in comparison to the overall size and layout. Slide 5, please. This is not conducive for many retailers as the space is either too large or the tenant does not require the size with the associated storefront. This also presents an issue when we look at demising the space into smaller units to achieve a gross floor area of 750 meters. The largest factor in being able to demise the premise into smaller units is for the max gross floor area, is the hydro setup and the general current power requirements needed for tenants. Due to the size of the existing hydro service installed during construction, the center is very near capacity. In fact, we were not able to achieve the general power requirements for Dollarama and had to agree on less power. If we were to demise the unit, we would not be able to provide an adequate electrical service for each unit at this time. We have discussed this with our electrical engineer to upgrade the hydro service. We have found out this is a major undertaking, as a new electrical service would require a new electrical room, BC Hydro would have to provide a larger service, and we would have to keep existing tenants operational while the switch happened. A cost estimate came out at over $100,000 for this. In closing, I would like to add I have talked to the adjacent tenants in the complex, and they support the variance requested. Many of the smaller retailers, restaurants, and service industry tenants are struggling due to COVID and are excited at the potential of Dollarama attracting new customers coming to the center. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hendricks. Any questions for the delegation? Seeing none, Councillor Martman, would you care to make the motion?
Thank you. I move the motion that council issue development variance permit number DVP 417 at 1925 Bowen Road with the following variance to increase the maximum permitted gross floor area for an individual retail use in the Core 3 zone with existing Unit 17 from 750 square meters to 940 square meters.
And we have a seconder with Councillor Armstrong. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. You're free to go, so to speak.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thank you. The next is C, Regional Growth Strategy Amendment, Nanaimo Airport, and Mr. Corson.
Thanks, Your Worship. So the report before you lays out a request from the Regional District of Nanaimo to amend the Regional Growth Strategy. And what they're hoping to do is align the land use designations at the Nanaimo Airport, which are in the RGS, with the recently completed master plan. And the RDN has requested a council resolution for your acceptance of that proposal. The existing RGS, as most of council will know, was adopted in 2011, and the airport master plan was completed in 2019. So what you see is there's some inconsistencies in the land uses at the airport, and specifically the lands between the airport terminal and the Trans-Canada Highway, and then the southern tip of the property down by Simpson Road. And so if council approves this this amendment, as you're probably aware, there's an existing electoral area A OCP and rezoning that's in the works at the moment. This would then lead to go to that public hearing for your consideration of the board. Staff recommends support of the amendments. It aligns with the work we've been doing with the airport on our ECDEV task force, as well as the recent industrial lands capacity analysis that was done. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Korst. Any questions for Mr. Corson? Seeing none, Councillor Martman, you care to make the motion?
Actually, I would prefer if somebody else would like to make the motion.
Certainly. Who's going to jump in? Councillor Armstrong, please.
Recommendation that council support the proposed regional growth strategy amendment and direct staff to forward council's decision to the Regional District of Nanaimo's board.
And a seconder, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion?
Yeah, I have my hand. Thank you. And I just wanted to say, I have no challenges with expanding the airport. Absolutely. I would love to fly directly to Puerto Vallarta one day. But I have concerns of the land use and the Cassidy Village. There's a couple of things I have concerns with also around the Cassidy Aquifer. And I know this conversation has been going on for decades. I know that there was concern about the water when the airport first expanded. And it's for those reasons, I don't see why we have to rush into approving this at this time, this regional growth strategy, when I would like to see more work done on that. Whether or not we really need all those amenities next to the airport, when I see us having the city having hotels and restaurants and wanting to encourage people to move from the airport into our downtown Nanaimo or other areas of Nanaimo, I'm just not comfortable with it at this time, so will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martman. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually share a lot of the concerns expressed by Councillor Martman. I think the regional growth strategy contains far too many areas that can see this type of growth without any servicing studies been completed to suggest whether that growth should be supported or makes sense. You know, I get that's a little bit independent of the particular airport application, but I think what Councillor Martman raises up some very good points to draw circles on a map with no servicing studies way outside existing municipal centers where it makes rational sense to have growth containment boundaries. You know, this is just like the opposite of good planning and sort of the hallmark of planning in the regional district for some time. So it's very, you know, in one hand, it definitely want to support the airport, and that's why we'll be voting in favor. And I'm well aware of some folks around this table that did call for and voted and lost the vote for looking at the urban containment boundaries within the RGS. But I feel like that point just needs to be reiterated. So I will be voting in favor of this because I do think there's some good things in the airport plan. But I also wanted to use this opportunity to speak to the poor growth patterns that are currently in the RGS. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brown. Any further discussion? The motion's been made. All those in favor? And those contrary? Councillor Martman only. Everyone else in favor? Thank you very much. It passes. The next is D, Land Exchange and Road Closure, 857 Old Victoria Road. Mr. Corson?
Thanks, Your Worship. So this report provides background information on proposed land exchange between the City of Nanaimo and a local developer, which will help facilitate a 20-lot subdivision. Under the agreement, the city will transfer its ownership of an unbuilt area of 8th Street, which is about a third of an acre, to the developer in exchange for about a third of an acre of existing land that Old Victoria Road actually runs on. So this addresses a historical anomaly that will be addressed through this. The applicant's covering the surveying legal costs with the land exchange, and the recommendations in your staff report set out a series of motions that approve the land exchange and also set the bylaw motion for the road closure. Again, happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corson. Always fun to clear up the cowpath days of Nanaimo. Any questions? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. And I was actually going to ask that question, like, how does this happen? I mean, if you want to get a little bit cheeky, we already have the property. I mean, there's a road on it, and we're giving up some property, and I'm fine with it. It's just like, I'm just wondering, like, how did this happen, and is it really necessary since we already have the property? Like, what can they do? Just out of curiosity.
Mr. Corson.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Bonner. Yeah, we have certainly there, like the mayor mentioned, there has been a lot of historically roads were built in places where maybe the city didn't actually have title to the road. So certainly, I think since the city incorporated in 1975. Staff have been working through these, and I certainly know over my last 10 years here, we've corrected the majority of them. I think there's probably a few left, but this was one of the larger, more egregious ones. And yeah, I know. I think this city's in a position where we are using someone else's land, and it creates a series of liability issues, which this will help rectify. So the land that we're actually exchanging will be used for an access into the subdivision. So it's actually a piece of city road that's going to end up turning back into road. So I think it works out well for the city.
Another question, Councillor Bonner?
Just a comment, this seems to be a Canadian tradition of Canadian governments putting roads on land they didn't own to begin with, but I'll leave that for another day.
Very appropriate comment, but in this case, a double mistake. Both somebody else's land, but done innocently in one sense as well. Yes. All right, Councillor Martman, would you care to move the motion?
Sure. Motion that council authorize the road closure and disposition of a portion of 8th Street adjacent to 857 Old Victoria Road and direct staff to enter into a road closure and land exchange agreement.
And a seconder? Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2021 number 7286 to provide for highway closure and dedication removal of a portion of 8th Street adjacent to 857 Old Victoria Road pass first reading.
There's seconder, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none. Councillor Martman, once again.
Motion that highway closure and dedication removal bylaw 2021 number 7286 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. And Councillor Martman, once again.
Motion that council direct staff to proceed with public notice for the closure and disposition of a portion of 8th Street.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next is item E, Morningside Drive Sewer Parcel Tax Amendment Bylaw, and that's Mr. Sims. Good evening.
Good evening, Your Worship, Council. Thanks for having me. I'd just like to acknowledge that we're starting off Local Government Awareness Week. I know you're all aware of local government, so that we don't have to say too much about that, but it also is National Public Works Week this week as well, so I'm pleased to fly that Public Works flag. I think you can look forward to an excellent presentation in which His Worship addresses the school children of Nanaimo, so we're excited to share that with you. So the report you have in front of you is a bylaw amendment for the Morningside Drive sewer parcel tax. So originally, council put this bylaw in place in 2019 to allow for the local area service around Morningside Drive. This service was set up to provide residents with sanitary sewer. Previously, they had been on septic fields. So the original bylaw envisioned imposing that tax in the year of 2020, and with some delays of the archaeological branch, and due to some discovery of archaeological materials on the project, we've had to delay that completion. So the bylaw in front of you recommends imposing the tax in 2022 instead of 2021. And we expect that we should be able to resolve that delay this year, and crews will be able to move back in fairly quickly and complete the work. Owners also have the option of paying in advance instead of a 10-year period. They can pay the entire repayment in advance, provided they pay it by the end of this year. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sims. Any questions for Mr. Sims? Seeing none, Councillor Martman, first motion, please.
Thank you. Motion that Morningside Drive Local Service Area Parcel Tax Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7288.01 to adopt amendments to reflect the change in the year of construction completed pass first reading.
And seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, motion carries. Councillor Martman.
Motion that Morningside Drive Local Service Area Parcel Tax Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7288.01 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? You're opposed, Councillor Armstrong? No, you're just a little slow there. All right, all those everybody's in favor, none opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. And Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Motion that Morningside Drive Local Service Area Parcel Tax Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 7288.01 pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Item 13, bylaws, Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Motion that zoning amendment bylaw 2020 number 4500.181 to rezone 5485 and 5495 Godfrey Road from single dwelling residential to low density residential R6 be adopted.
Seconded by Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have no notices of motion, Ms. Gurry. Any other business? Seeing none, a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Sorry, Councillor Bonner, you wanted to say something? The motion.
Yeah, well, actually, Your Worship, I would assume that this is the part of the meeting where we would have no arising from delegations.
If someone makes a motion.
Okay, I was hoping that there would be a reconsider motion. There isn't, so I would like to put a motion forward that we delay the deconstruction of the curb encampment, the curb set up at Opal and Rock City until such time as a thorough community engagement and report back to council.
Point of order.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Yes.
I believe that's a clear attempt to get around the bylaw reconsideration.
I wouldn't disagree with that, Ms. Gurry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. There is a motion that was passed by council, and that would need to be reconsidered. That motion is, its intent is much different than the motion that Councillor Bonner wishes to make. It undoes the motion and the will of council that was made at the May 3rd meeting. So reconsideration would be the way to go, and then a subsequent motion after that motion had been reconsidered and possibly changed, then his motion would be in order. So Councillor Brown is correct. That motion is not in order.
Unless I hear a motion to reconsider, which I don't, then I'm going to ask again for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Moved, Councillor Martman, seconded Councillor Thorpe. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's work tonight.
No egregious errors this evening. Thank you.